Hello, brilliant entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 370, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/370. In today's episode, I'm going to help you identify the number one sales call mistake and how to fix it. So if you have been avoiding sales calls because you can't get them to work, or you're running lots of sales calls and people seem to be interested but you're not getting the sale, then this is going to be a really helpful episode for you. Let's dive on in. I'm Tash Corbin and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. First and foremost, I need to be 100% honest with you. I love sales calls. They are so good. It is so amazing being able to speak to potential clients one-to-one, really deeply understand what they need, what they're looking for, what they get excited about, what challenges that they're facing, and then being able to work together to decide what the right fit is for them moving forward. I get super excited when I get to do sales conversations. I don't do as many of them these days simply because most people join either through a quick email back and forth, or they just go and check out most of my products and services on their sales pages. But it is still something that I do here and there. I'd probably do maybe 3 or 4 a month. And whenever I get to do sales conversations, I absolutely love it. So I need to tell you that first and foremost, because I know a lot of people don't. I know that a lot of people do not think that sales calls are fun to do. It is one of the most confronting ways for you to make sales in your business. You are face to face with that person. You make your pitch for your product or service to that person. You get to see their reaction in real time. You have to deal with the rejection face to face if they decide that it's not the right fit for them. And I can understand why that might feel a little uncomfortable, why we might avoid doing that. But sales conversations, when done well, are actually the most high conversion part of a sales process that you can use. And when we avoid this number one sales conversation mistake, by the way, it also means that we are far less likely to have someone say no. Now, the reason why we are far less likely to have someone say no is not because we push them into things. It's not because we use psychological tricks and manipulation and trickery to get them to buy something that they don't actually need. It's because the number one mistake that I see people make is something that actually prevents you from having to pitch to people who don't want it in the first place. So, this applies if you have people saying throughout your sales conversations, oh, yes, oh, yeah, that sounds great, oh, wonderful. But then when it comes to making the purchase, they say no. This mistake happens a lot if you have people say, oh, yeah, that's really lovely, but that's not in my budget right now. Maybe I need to think about it. Send me some details on email. Yeah, have you had people say that to you? Send me some details on email. It might also be where you see people, they get it, right? They understand what you're talking about. They're like, yeah, that sounds really amazing. Yep. But it's not a priority for them. They don't have the budget for it. They don't want to have the budget for it. Or even if you have quite a few people say yes, but then don't actually follow through and book in with you. If that's the case, and conversion is not happening for you with your sales conversations, especially if people seem keen, but it's not happening, then it's likely you are making the number one sales conversation mistake that I see most people making. We have detailed sales conversation training inside the Takeoff program. And when people really understand this mistake and start avoiding making the mistake, they see a significant increase in conversion on their sales conversations, but also they don't hate doing sales conversations as much as they did prior. So what is this number one mistake? It is not qualifying before you pitch. And it's either you're not doing it all or you're not doing it well. So what do I mean by qualifying? Well, qualifying is the process of working out whether someone is a good fit for your product or service, whether they are on board with what it is that you're going to be achieving together. And it's asking really powerful questions so that you only ever pitch a product or service that is the right fit once you know that it's the right fit, and once you've confirmed with the person that they are not only excited about the outcome that that product or service could help them achieve, but they are actually ready to take that leap. So qualifying is actually a really powerful way to avoid pushing something on someone that they don't want. Qualifying is the way that we have so much confidence in our product or service when we talk about it, because we're able to talk about it in a way that directly correlates with exactly what that person wants, what they've struggled with, what their resistance points might be, right? We actually understand enough about their situation, about their desire, about their goal, and we confirm that before we pitch the product or service. So for most people, when they run a sales conversation, yep, they ask some questions, but they are mentally preparing for the pitch. They are, in their heads, putting together, how am I going to make this sound really valuable? How am I going to make sure that they book in with me? How do I ensure that they definitely want it? People often will discount on the fly or add bonuses on the fly because during the sales conversation, they're not listening to what the other person is telling them. They're listening to the voice in their head that is trying to help them construct a really sexy sales pitch. But the reason I love sales conversations so much is because 90% of my sales conversations are actually letting the other person do the talking. It's asking great questions. It's understanding what their situation is. And then it's using good quality questions to confirm we are on the same page about what they want, when they want it, why they want it, and how I can deliver on that outcome. So, how do we qualify effectively? And where does qualifying begin and end? Well, you may be surprised to know that qualifying actually begins well before the sales conversation even begins. It begins with your resonant messaging. So, the way that you talk about your products and services online actually helps people to determine whether it might be a good fit for them or not. And the more that you try to write your offers in a way that it works for everybody and it's magic and it does everything, the less resonant that will be and the less clarity people will have when they jump on a sales conversation with you about what it is that you do, whether you're a specialist that can support them, about what it is that they're buying from you, because it just kind of sounds like you're selling magic things that do magic results, and it doesn't necessarily connect with what I need, with what I am facing. And so the less niched and the less clear your messaging is when you post on social media, in your blogs, in your podcast episodes, in your emails, on your sign up page for your sales conversation, right? In your promos, in all of those spaces, the less specific and resonant the messaging is there, the less qualified people are when they jump on a sales call with you. And so you will often find that when you improve and niche down your messaging and your offers, you will get far higher conversion rates on your sales conversations because the people who are actually signing up to have a chat with you know with confidence that you are going to be able to help them. They have far more clarity on what they are expecting out of the process of working with you. And yet, so many people still get themselves caught up in niche resistance, get themselves caught up in trying to be all things to all people, get themselves caught up in trying to say yes to every single thing, be all things, talk about every particular facet of working with them, every possible benefit of working with them. And it becomes so vague and so far, so distant from what I'm experiencing, I have no idea whether it's the right fit or not. And so qualifying actually begins with messaging. It begins with niche. So knowing who you are writing your offers for, who is the ideal person for this offer, who, person, not topic, person, that's niche, and what the value proposition is of that offer for that specific person within your niche, and it just expressing that more concrete, more tangibly in your messaging, not just when you're posting about your offers though, in the way that you help people, the examples that you give, the stories that you tell, the blogs that you write, the podcasts that you record. When everything is done through the lens of niche and really deeply resonant messaging, you attract far more qualified buyers, far more qualified leads. And it is so fascinating to me how many people to this day still write on their offers, you must be willing to do the work. As though telling people that they need to be willing to do the work in order to be allowed to work with you is somehow magically going to make people more willing to do the work or eliminate those people who aren't. Guess who is the least likely to do the work when I have clients? It is the people who over and over and over again reassure me they are so ready to do this. They're so willing to do the work, right? Because for most people, the ones who are actually willing to do the work, they're doing the work. The ones who are saying they're willing to do the work are the ones who aren't actually doing the work, yeah? And so for a lot of people, they try and qualify people online by giving people, and in their messaging including, this list of check boxes that you must subscribe to in order to be worthy of purchasing this package. But the very people who are least likely to check those boxes are the most likely to want to be someone who checks those boxes. And so they're the ones who say, oh yes, that's me. I'm totally coachable. I'm totally willing to do the work. I'm totally ready for phenomenal success. I'm totally ready to listen and do what you tell me to do. They're not the ones. They're not the ones. Instead of trying to shortcut or bypass your way to better qualified leads by creating these random requirements that aren't really effective at qualifying at all, what we need to do is become far more effective at speaking tangibly and resonantly about our work, at giving far more tangible lived experiences as examples and as the insights into the blog posts that you write, the examples that you use in your podcast episodes, the situations and circumstances that you give people advice on. The more specific you are, the more it feels like you're peeking in my windows, you know exactly what I'm going through, and therefore you are best equipped to support me. You running around the internet telling everyone that you only work with coachable people does not tell me that you're the most likely person that's going to be able to help me the most. And honestly, in most cases, those types of things that you ask people to say or commit to, or those random criteria that you make people aware of before they sign up to work with you or before they sign up to do a sales conversation, honestly, they just tend to attract the wrong kind of person. Everyone wants to believe they're an action taker. Everyone wants to believe that they're coachable. Everyone wants to believe that they will do the work that you prescribe. We want to believe that about ourselves. That is not a valid qualifying process. So, number one, resonant and effective messaging, and in particular in your messaging, and I've got a template for you for this, is your bridge messaging. Because if someone knows exactly what's going on and they know how to fix it and they haven't fixed it, then chances are that they're not an action taker, right? I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. And unless you are a productivity person or an accountability person, then more information and more knowledge is not really going to solve that person's problem, is it? In most cases, the ideal client for your VIP packages and offers in particular, but also for courses and memberships, the most likely ideal client has misdiagnosed. That's why they're still struggling. For my ideal client for the Takeoff program, they've misdiagnosed what's going on in their business. They think that they need a bigger audience, they need more followers on Facebook, they need more reach on Instagram. They just need to grow the eyeballs that are seeing their products and services. I know that's actually not what's going on. What's going on for most of my ideal clients for the Takeoff program is that they are reaching a small audience. Yeah, it's not a giant audience. They're reaching a small audience, but even that audience doesn't get it because they haven't got clarity of what their niche is. They do not know how to write resonant messaging. And therefore, it doesn't matter how many people see their offers. It doesn't matter how many people they get in front of. They are not going to have a sustainable business because they don't know how, with their niching, their messaging, and their offers, they don't know how to attract and convert clients. That's their biggest issue. But if I ran around the internet saying, you don't need followers, babe. You don't need to worry about reaching people on socials. All you need is better business foundations. The very people who are the perfect students for the Takeoff program would go, oh, foundations, that sounds cool. I'm just looking for followers right now. My issue, I don't need that. My issue is I need to grow my audience. I need to reach more people. And so there's a gap between what my ideal client thinks is their problem and thinks is the solution, and what I can see is the deeper problem or solution. So for your business, it might be that they've misdiagnosed completely. It might be that they're sort of dabbling at the surface and they're not addressing what's actually going on underneath. Or it might be that they're particularly focused on one component, but really in order to achieve their goals, they need to bring a number of different components together. So they might be completely fixated on their marketing, but you know that they need a good marketing strategy, strong messaging, and to work on an expansive mindset, right? So they are just like marketing, and following marketing advice, and they're getting nowhere. They're trying all these different strategies, but they're not really getting any results. And they're still thinking there must be a marketing solution here. You know that the marketing strategies that they're using, they're pretty good. But if they were to combine that with better messaging and deal with a lot of the mindset wobbles that are coming up and that self-sabotage, maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, maybe a bit of perfectionism is coming through, they would be far, far, far more likely to get the clients that they want to get. They would grow their business the way that they want, all those sorts of things. I'll use a non-business example as well. So maybe it's a parenting thing. And so you're a parenting expert and mentor, and your ideal client has a child who's really struggling at school and they are really struggling with communicating with you. And so the parent is really focused on, I just want my child to talk to me. I just want my child to talk to me. How do I get my child to talk to me? And you know that in order to get the child to talk to them and achieve the bigger goal of feeling really connected to their child and feeling like their child is really set up to succeed, that they don't just need to get their child to talk to them. They actually need to learn how to listen better when their child does. They need to learn how to read what's going on for their child when they aren't talking to them. They need to create safety for the child to be able to talk about anything, right? I'm totally making this up. I'm not a parent nor a parenting expert, but you can see that to have the thing that they want and the bigger thing that they want, that it's not just this one fixated thing. It's not this one narrow thing that they need to work on. It's a range of things that need to come together at once. That's often the case, is that bridge between what they think they need versus what you can see is the real problem going on and is what they really need. So instead of running around the internet telling everyone that they're wrong, telling everyone that they've got it wrong, telling everyone that they're focused on the wrong thing or they don't understand, right? And just getting crankier and crankier at your audience, what your messaging needs to do is actually bridge that gap. And instead of going, it's not that, it's this, we say, yes, I can see why you want that. I can see why you're focused there. Here's how to do that. And if we did that and this, look at the goal you would be able to achieve, right? So it's taking what they are fixated on and meeting them where they are, and also using that as an opportunity to bridge into what you can see is the underlying issue or the combination that they need to be working on, right? So bridge messaging is really powerful and it's a really important part of understanding online business in particular, because for a lot of people, they're yelling at the internet what people should be looking for, and the internet is just ignoring them and going, yeah, that's fine, that's great, yep, cool, that sounds lovely, but I don't need that. I need this instead. And so instead of almost like arguing with your audience, you can bridge the gap, yeah? Don't argue it. Don't ignore it, bridge it, yeah? So I always think of my beautiful friend, Bridget Esselman, whenever I say, Bridget, don't argue it, bridge it. Anyway, so that is step number 1 of qualifying, is actually making sure you've got resonant and effective messaging. Now, at the show notes of today's episode, tashcorbin.com/370, I've got an entire messaging document and training there for you. You can have that for free. So we'll take care of that messaging part. Next, we need to ensure that before that person books in their sales conversation with you, you both have an understanding of the basics, right? It goes 2 ways. So you need to have an understanding of what they want, what they're looking for, what their questions might be, so that you can assess, is a sales conversation actually the right step here? Is this something I can provide to them? And they need to have an understanding of the basics of what you're going to be doing as well. So if your VIP packages start at $2,500, that's important information that someone needs to know before they sign up to do a sales conversation with you. Now, as a consent-based marketer, I am 100% a fan of complete transparency in pricing. Totally, 100%. As in, the price of all of my programs is on the sales page. The price of my VIP packages is very clearly stated. The hourly rate of working with me on which my packages are built is very open and transparent. I do not hide my pricing. I do not force people to get on a call before I will reveal my pricing, because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. And quite frankly, I've had enough sales conversations as a customer where that has happened to me, and I just get really cranky and feel like I'm being manipulated. And so I don't want to do that to anyone else. So you will always be encouraged by me to have complete transparency of pricing. Now, I understand that that can sometimes be tricky if you're not sure what the product or service is that you would be recommending to this person, or you need to build out a bespoke proposal, or there are other factors involved in relation to giving that person some assurance or clarity on what the pricing might be. But you always know a range. You always know a way to give them some form of indication. So you might be able to say to them, I have a range of different ways that we could work together. And they include self-study options that begin at $250 all the way up to a VIP one-to-one package, which they generally start at about $6,500, right? You would absolutely be able to give that information to people before they booked in a sales conversation with you. For most people, the reason why you don't is because 1, you've been told not to, or 2, I just eye rolled for those just listening to the audio, or 2, you're afraid that if you do tell them the price, that they won't book in the call. Now, if the price or the price range is enough for that person to decide not to book the call in at all, then I would argue that they were going to say no regardless. Yeah. A lot of fear-based marketing and a lot of manipulation marketing gets the person to make big commitments, and you do some NLP and hypnosis to them in the sales call before you ever tell them the price. I would argue all that does is leads to buyer's remorse. All that does is leads to the person feeling pressured. And ultimately, again, it's just wasting everyone's time, and it just doesn't feel nice to do it as a provider, personally. Now, I will leave it in your capable hands. You're an adult. You get to decide whether you want to use consent-based marketing or not, whether you want to be transparent in your pricing or not. But I would argue that you'll have far more fabulous sales conversations and far more fabulous experiences of sales conversations if you embrace transparency of pricing. And I know most people who listen to this podcast do it anyway, but that is definitely one piece of the puzzle that I think makes a big difference to conversion rates in sales calls. Now, as I said, it doesn't need to necessarily be the detailed price. You can give a price range. But the more clarity you can give around the pricing in particular, the more likely the person is going to therefore have made some considerations about what they would need to be able to feel confident in achieving by the end of the package or by end of working with you in order for that to feel like it's a good value fit for them as well. And so what happens when you give transparency of pricing, even if it's a little higher than the potential client was expecting, is in between finding out and booking the call or getting on the call with you, that person starts to think, okay, well, if it's going to be $5,000, what would I need out of this? So when you ask them on the sales call with your qualifying questions, what kind of goal are you thinking about? Or what would you like to achieve out of working together? They're going to be far more informed, and they're going to thought about it far more. And not only that, the more they think about those outcomes, the more they get attached to those outcomes actually being their reality. And so the more excited about achieving those outcomes they become. So one of the things that you may actually find if you embrace transparency of pricing is that the people who do come to the sales conversations are far more likely to give you deeper insights into what they're looking for. They'll be far more specific with clarity around what goals they want to achieve or what challenges they are facing that they need you to help them overcome. And so they're a far better quality client as well, because they're bringing information, responsibility, and determination and motivation to the table before you've even signed them up as a client. So it can have some really great knock-on/flow-on effects in relation to the quality of client and also the enjoyment that you get and the quality of information that you get inside that sales conversation as well. All right. So both understanding the basics before booking in. So for example, if you don't do done for you websites, it's a do it yourself kind of offer, or we do it together kind of offer. That would be important for someone to know before they booked a sales conversation with you. If you do not have capacity to get started with a client until 3 months from now, that would be important information for someone to know before they book a sales conversation with you. If there are some prerequisites before people are able to work with you in some way, good information for them to have. If there's some basic structure to what it is that you generally offer, good information for them to have. So even just getting some of those things clarified through the sales conversation booking process or the qualifying process that you do before you give them the link to book the sales conversation, it's going to make so much difference. So I don't book sales conversations with people until we've emailed each other. And or messaged each other, DM'd each other. And it's just a couple of questions. Now, a lot of people will send me an email and say, can I book a call with you to talk about your takeoff program? And it's taken me a while to find my words on how to say, whoa, Nelly, before I put time into having a conversation with you about this, what questions do you have to ask, right? Have you looked at the sales page, right? I don't say it like that. I say, oh, absolutely, we can jump on a call if we need to. In the meantime, though, why don't you let me know a little bit about your business, what goals you're hoping to achieve, and any specific questions you have about the program. In case I'm able to answer them on email, we don't even need to jump on the call in the first place. And you know what? Unfortunately, a little bit, 95% of people, their questions are super easy for me to answer on email, and we don't end up needing to have a call. And, sometimes I wish it was a little more complex, so I would get a chance to do a bit more sales calls, but Sometimes it's just, I'm just a bit worried because my business is XYZ. And to be honest with you, half of those would be, yeah, actually that isn't a fit. And so like, why wouldn't I want to know that information up front? And like, I've just saved them time as well. Often they will have like a product-based business and I'll say, look, it's just not going to be a fit for you. The takeoff program is really focused on like signature VIP one-to-one packages. And so there's just like, you can join if you want, I'll take your money, but there's not a lot that applies to like understanding inventory, understanding markups and margins and selling things at mass scale, because we're aiming to sell 4 or 5 packages at $2,000 each, or, 5 or 6 packages at $7,000 each, depending on what people's business is. And so if you're wanting to sell something at a $99 price point, well, I might be able to help you get 5 or 6 sales a month, but I don't think that that's the kind of volume you're looking for. And there's just so much different about product-based businesses. So when people let me know about their business model, or they let me know about what they're looking for help with, often it's not something that the takeoff program will help with. And so being able to just get that clear on email and then answer the question and then say, no, it's not really a fit, go and see this person, or I would recommend that you do XYZ first. So a lot of the time people ask me about the takeoff program and I end up sending them a free resource first instead, because they're not quite there yet. Or they they've become fixated on a certain strategy that I don't teach inside the takeoff program. And I say, look, just so that you're aware, I don't actually teach that strategy. Here is some content and some information on why I don't teach that strategy, and what I would recommend to get started first. But if that is the strategy that you're wanting to embrace, then no, the takeoff program's not going to be a fit. And then half of those people would come back to me and go, oh, really? What you said sounded way sexier, actually. Can we talk about that? And then we can. Or, half of them will be like, nah, I'm just going to sell $9 offers. So no, that's not going to be fit. Yeah, you're right. I'll go somewhere else. And so, yeah, both of us having a bit of an understanding of the basics, me having an understanding of them and them having an understanding of me and the offer that they're considering, it just takes so much pressure off. It's so much easier. And it means that when I do have sales conversations, like it's something juicy that we need to really unpack, or, we really need to understand whether it's going to be the right fit or not. So, just both understand some of the basics. And if you don't know anything about someone, you don't know, like, your time is important too as well. A lot of people just take all the sales conversations that they can get because they're so desperate and they just want it to be a good fit and they just desperately want to get some clients. And I totally understand that, but like, you could have used that time to go out and work on your messaging and do some content and do a couple of live pieces of content that actually generate high quality leads for a really good fit. And so there's always an opportunity cost. And so your time is valuable, and doing a little bit of that pre-qualifying on email, having some of the basics available for people to understand upfront makes a huge difference to the quality of sales conversation you'll have and your conversion rates. Right. Number 3, and this is a bit of a biggie, it's asking the right questions. So when you get people onto a sales conversation, just asking them, oh, what package were you looking at? Oh, what questions do you have? Well, if you're relying on them to do all of the heavy lifting and all of the work, then they're going to have read something pretty generic in most cases and have applied it and specified how it works for them themselves. And it's not going to convert very well, is it? Because you're just asking them what questions they have, but it's not actually a sales call. It's just a Q&A. So when it comes to crafting your sales conversations, really understanding like what are the key pieces of information that you need to provide a recommendation, and be really confident in that recommendation and be confident that you can deliver for that person. And it takes practice to know what your questions are and what information you need. But it is worth putting that time and energy into creating that refinement and really understanding, like, what do I need to know here? These days, if someone reaches out to me, especially I get a lot of DMs on Instagram and Facebook from people saying, I saw you in this group, or I saw you post about that, and I'm thinking maybe you might be able to help me. In 3 to 4 questions will often be able to diagnose what the real problem is for someone and provide a recommendation. Like, it doesn't take me long these days to get to the crux of what's going on with someone's business. I'm very good at what I do. Let's just say that. I'm unafraid to say that. I'm very good at business mentorship and understanding what's going on in someone's business model and making recommendations as well. But that has come through lots of questions. So I remember when I first started my business and I did a few sales conversations, and a lot of the time, like, I would finish a sales conversation and it was a no, and I can understand why it was a no, because I didn't know enough about the person's business. And so I would do my pitch for, let's do a month together and we'll be able to do A, B, and C, and this will be really amazing. And then the person will go, no, that doesn't really feel like a good fit for me, because I actually already have a blog and I do this and I do that. And so it doesn't feel like it'll really add anything. And I'm like, right? Or they wouldn't say all of that, but they would say, oh no, I've kind of already got that covered. I was more looking for A and B. I'm like, oh, well, I could do that, right? But it's too late by then, right? Once you get the, it's too late. I made the pitch too early. That's what I'm talking about in this episode, right? If you pitch before you've qualified effectively, you will significantly reduce your conversion rate, and you will significantly reduce the excitement and the clarity that people have about, oh yeah, this is exactly what I need. So I needed to better qualify. So I started doing sales conversations with 35 questions in front of me. It was like a little choose your own adventure. And I mapped out all of the questions of like all of the things that I'd probably need to try and work out and understand. But I didn't have to ask all 35. I would be like, oh, okay, so based on that, I can make assumptions about this one, this one, this one. Okay, so based on that, I can make assumptions about this one, right? So I could sort of skip my way through to, I've got the key piece of information that I need. And so I would ask questions like, how long have you been in business? How many people are on your mailing list? How many followers do you have, right? And then nowadays, I say, how many new people do you get on your mailing list each month? So I don't care about the baseline number. I want to know what your list growth looks like at the moment, yeah? Because I know that that is a far bigger identifier of where they are in their business journey than the total number. I've had people who have teeny numbers on their mailing list, but it's growing pretty quickly. And I've got people who've got super large mailing lists, but it hasn't grown in a year. And so they are two very different situations. But if I only asked how many people on your mailing list, I would have assumed that the larger mailing list was in a better space at that point in time. And so, yeah, it's a matter of refinement and getting down to the crux of what are the questions that you need to ask and what information do you need. So in most cases, I'll give you some loose categories, but like in most cases, you're going to need to ask a lot more questions specific to your area of expertise. I can't guess what that is for 10,000 people all in one go. But what I can do is give you some kind of like key categories of questions to be thinking about asking. So number one is like, what is your goal? What is it that you're after? And so you'll find different ways to ask that question where you can get into something a little more specific. So I always ask people, what's your current income and what's your income goal? So I'm getting a good assessment of what kind of growth they're looking for. And I will also, in terms of goals, I will ask people about like what is their vision of what they want their business model to look like, or what clarity do they have around how to structure their business and their strategy moving forward. So I'm just understanding like what is it that they are looking for? Where are they wanting to go? And if the questions don't elicit thorough enough answers, I've got some little nudgy follow-up questions to make sure I'm getting the insights that I need. So goals is a nice loose area of qualifying that I would expect that everyone asks people before they ever pitch them something, right? Can you imagine, you've probably done it, trying to pitch your product or service to someone without knowing whether their goal is the thing that you help people achieve? You just assume, or you just hope that it's aligned, but you can just ask. And in a lot of cases, people are quite specific about their goals, and it gives you insight into what the best solution might be, or where you focus your energy and attention when you're talking about your offer. So if someone says to me, I'm not really bothered about my list size, but what I really want to see is like more followers and more engagement on socials, then when I pitch my offer, I'm not going to focus on list growth because that's not their priority. I might say something along the lines of, and, I might do a throwaway line of, and all of that audience growth, we will connect into list growth just as a little backup for you because, your audience on social media is a little more treacherous and it's on borrowed ground. So we want to make sure that we are also building assets for your business. But yes, the core focal point for you will be on getting that engagement up and getting your follower numbers up, right? So then it sounds like, number one, I've been listening to them. And number two, I'm focusing what we are going to work on and what we're going to achieve on the thing that they want. That's how they're going to measure their success. So why would I say, follower numbers don't really count, but we'll grow your list by 10,000 people, right? Like, that's not what they want. They want an audience. They want follower numbers. And so, and when people work with me, they get both. But I'm going to focus on the one that's more important to them because it's their package. It's their priority. Yes. So questions about goals, questions about what they've tried. So I find this really helpful to ask people, okay, well, what have you done so far to get to your goal of 10K months? What that helps me to understand is where they might be falling down, where they may have run off in the wrong direction, how they're feeling about that goal. And, there are some people who are at the end of their tether. I've done everything. And there are some people like, well, I've done a few posts on social media, but I don't really know what I'm doing. So I haven't done much at all, right? And so the way that I pitch and the value proposition that I focus on for one versus the other is going to be very different when I do eventually pitch. So this is why questions and qualifying are so important. So what they've done so far, definitely a big one. Another big one is barriers. So different to what they've tried is also understanding what's getting in the way. Why do you feel like it hasn't achieved the goals that you wanted so far? Why do you feel like you haven't got your child talking to you so far? What do you think's in the way? What's the barrier between you and that goal? So that you can see what it looks like from their perspective. So if you think about, there's that, I can't remember the example. I think it was a statue, right? And if someone's looking at a statue from one end and someone's looking from that, and this person says, this is a statue of a man, because they can see his bits. But on the back end, it's got long hair, and the person behind, like, let's get all up in gender stereotypes. The person looking for this one is like, no, it's a woman, right? You're looking at the same statue, but you're looking at it from different angles. That's exactly the same when it comes to the looking at the problem and the barriers that are in your ideal client's way, right? In this lead's way, is that you can see from your beautiful helicopter view and your experience and being on the other side, you can see this is a tiny little blip in their journey, right? You can see exactly what they need in order to jump over it. But they can't see that yet because they're stuck and they think that they've tried everything. And so it's very important that you validate and connect with them on that barrier. And you reassure them that you're able to help them over that barrier. You don't just dismiss it and say, oh, that's no drama. It'll be fine. You don't ignore it because it's exactly what's in their face right now. That's the thing that they're butting up against. Instead, you acknowledge it, you understand it, and you validate it. And you reassure them that in the process of working with you, that is absolutely something that you'll be able to work over and work through together. And that typically, that's something you can get sorted really quickly if it is something you can get sorted quickly, right? So asking them about the barriers, what's in between them and the goal that they have, what's getting in the way right now, what are they butting up against, will really help you to pitch something and pitch in a way, focus your pitch on the things that they are seeing right now. And then the final sort of batch of questions that I ask people is around like what they're looking for in terms of process. So I will often ask, like, is this something where it's urgent, we need to do a bunch of sessions really quickly and get this sorted? Or are you more looking to work over this over an extended period of time because you've got other stuff that you need to take care of? So what I'm doing there is assessing, like, how much time do they have to work on this? How urgent is the deadline? But also, even if it's urgent, do they understand that if it's urgent and we need to sort it quickly, we need to do a lot of work in the short term? And so by asking it that way, I find I get a really good read, but it's a very practically grounded kind of read on it as well. Because if I just said, how quickly do you need your list to be 10,000 people? Everyone would say this week. So the way that I ask the question, I used to ask it that way, by the way. So the way that I ask the question is more about like, okay, is this something where it's like, it's urgent, there's a really short-term deadline, so we're going to need to do a bunch of work really quickly to get this nailed? Or is this something where because you've got other things on and you need to work it in with all of the other stuff that's going on, we're going to take our time and we'll maybe come together like once every 2 weeks or something? Where are you thinking? I also will ask people in terms of process, like, have there been any times where you've worked with others and they did something that you loved or didn't love, right? So that I can just understand, like, is there a specific thing that they're going to look for? Is there something I can incorporate into the pitch that I can like, oh, I could totally do that. I actually had someone say to me earlier this year, they're like, I know this sounds really weird, but can you just set up a little automated email that like sends me a nudge every couple of weeks to remind me to keep going? I was like, yeah, I can totally do that. It took me like 13 minutes. I set them up on a little email sequence automation in my system. And it literally said, and I called it from Tashbot. I've talked about Tashbot in the past. So Tashbot here, little nudge. Just want to make sure you're still making progress. Because a lot of my VIP clients these days only work with me once a quarter. We do a strategic planning session each quarter, and that's it. That's their year is 4 big sessions with me. But this person was like, I'm going to forget all the things that we talked about. I'm going to forget to even go check back in on what it was that I said I was going to do with you. So let's do once a quarter, but can you send me like a more regular nudge? And so I did. It was so easy to do. And it was like, it was a no issue for me to be able to set that up for them. And they like literally just said like, automated is fine. I just want to be reminded. And I know if I put a reminder in my calendar, I'm going to end up deleting it or just ignoring it. But if Tash Corbin shows up in my inbox, I'm going to read it. I was like, yeah, perfect. I can totally do that. So even just understanding some of those things really does help me to then, when I'm putting the package together, like focus on that and make sure that that's included. And like, number one, it just shows how much you've listened and how much you've paid attention. But number two, it's like the thing that I'm going to pitch, I'm going to build it exactly how you need. I'm going to build it so that I'm confident in delivering the result and you're confident in your ability to do it. And so that whole like right questions part of sales conversation is so powerful. Imagine having the answer to those questions and now doing your sales pitch. For those of you who jump onto sales calls and just start pitching, or you ask the person questions but kind of gloss over stuff and then start pitching because you've already pre-written your pitch and you've already pre-written your offer and like they just need to sit and listen to it, wouldn't it be far more powerful, far more potent, far more effective if you actually just asked some really good questions and listened first and then design something specific to that person's needs? Now, when I say design it to that person's needs, it might be that the package is exactly the same for everyone in terms of the number of sessions or, you know, how long you're working together, all those sorts of things. But the focal point in terms of what you focus on when you pitch it, the messaging, the what we're going to make sure we overcome, the, yep, we're going to get this done. Like that is really important. Now, one thing that I also do in my sales conversations to really maximize this qualifying process before I do the pitch is the confirmation. And the confirmation is making sure that I tap in together their goal, why they want their goal. So it's also part of the goal process. It's like, well, why do you want this? Like, what's your driver? What's going on for you? You know, what would you get if you got that? Yep, great. And so that I do this great confirmation process throughout the sales pitch. So let's say the person said to me, well, I really want to get lots and lots of followers because I just feel like I need social proof. And if I had social proof, then more people would buy. And so then something that I will do in the sales conversation is when we're ready to start getting into the pitch part, I just confirm that I understand everything that that person is looking for. I understand the priorities. So I'll say to them something like, look, it sounds to me like your core concern is that you need to get far more social proof because you're seeing that social proof is a really big driver of your results right now. Is that right? Yep. And if we can get those results, then you feel like you would have the confidence to be able to invest in some of the other things that would scale and really skyrocket from there, like ads and team and taking time off. Have I got that right? Yes, that's exactly what I want. Great. And we were just talking about your signature package being the thing that's going to create the biggest cash flow injection for you right now. But we need to make sure that it's structured in a way that you're not having 40 client sessions every single week and really burning yourself out. We want to have a signature program that's easy and straightforward for you to deliver, and you don't need to sell a lot of them in order to hit that minimum income of 10K months. Does that sound like we're in the right ballpark? Yes, that's what I need. Okay, well, here's my take. What I can see is blah, 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 blah. Therefore, what I'm going to recommend to you is, and then I do my pitch, right? So all of what I have done up until that point is qualifying. I'm listening, I'm asking, I'm understanding, I'm digging in. And for most people, the qualifying part of their sales process is the bit they skip or they gloss over or they don't really know how to do it very well. And so I understand this podcast is a very long podcast, but I wanted to share all of this with you and the full confirmation process as well as qualifying, because I know what a difference it makes to, number one, how keen you are to do sales conversations. Number two, how well they work. Number three, your conversion rates. And number four, understanding the importance all the way back to the messaging, all the way back to the niching. Because without that foundation of epic niching, of epic messaging, of being able to bridge your ideal client's understanding of what's really going on for them, you will continue to flail about getting very low quality leads, very unqualified inquiries, and you will continue to feel frustrated that even though you clearly said on your sales page, people must be willing to do the work, the only people who seem to be coming onto sales calls with you are real tire kickers. They're not motivated. But you said you would only work with motivated people. Why did unmotivated people sign up? It's because your messaging is not doing its job. And so if I can leave you with any takeaway from this, other than, of course, qualify before you pitch and do a really good job of it, it is that the first step of qualifying is actually really nailing that messaging. And the more specific and resonant and tangible that messaging is, the better the qualifying is. And a little bit of time invested in really understanding and nailing your messaging will save you so much time in wasted sales conversations, wasted inquiries, talking to a bunch of tire kickers, DM inquiries from people who just want stuff from you for free, right? You will save yourself so much more time by getting the messaging part right than you will ever save yourself by simply just telling people that you only work with motivated people, or you only work with people willing to do the work, or you only work with self-starters. Honestly, if people were super motivated, if they were self-starters, they would have started by now. They would have sorted it by now. Ultimately, that is not a measure of whether someone's an ideal client for you or not, because I would not identify myself. In a lot of areas of my life, I would not say I am a self-starter at all. That's why I hire people. That's why I work with coaches. That's why I work with mentors. And so when I see people say, oh, you need to be a self-starter, I assume I'm going to be left to my own devices and you're never going to catch up with me. I'm never going to actually have any kind of sense of accountability with you. And if that's the case, I'm not getting what I'm paying for, so I'm not doing it. And so you're often turning away self-aware people who realize that they need a coach because you're saying you only work with self-starters when the very people who want to pay you handsomely and are willing to actually admit that they need help are the ones who don't identify as self-starters. See where that doesn't quite add up? Anyway, I'll close it up there. I want you to go over to the show notes of today's episode and grab that messaging template, tashcorbin.com/370. It comes with a training as well. And it's really going to help you understand the difference between messaging that tries to tell people who they are and what they need to be in order to pay you versus messaging that attracts and converts your ideal clients, gets them excited to work with you, and bridges that gap between what they think is the problem and what they think is the solution versus what you know is the problem and what you know is the solution that will really help them to achieve their goals. So make sure you come and check that one out. I'd love to hear from you as well if sales calls are something that you're willing to give another go, whether you've been avoiding them in the past or, if this whole concept of qualifying has just been never even heard of it before. Send me a DM on Instagram. My handle is @TashCorbin. I always love hearing from you. You're also welcome to email me at any time. My email is support@tashcorbin.com. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Thank you so much for listening to this super extended episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.